Hello, my name is Jennifer Rodriguez, and my presentation is Communicating with Appropriate Listening. So today I'm going to be talking about a few of the required areas, which is going to be myth of multitasking, responding help speakers, and a thorough explanation of questioning. And then I also have 10 key ideas that I'll list after talking about the required areas as well. So let's start off with myth of multitasking. People think it's efficient and effective to multitask, but it's not. So this whole section is actually kind of on the side of the page in the chapter, and it had like this little study on like how our brains process information and how we can only focus on one thing at a time, really. Another way that it's kind of bad is if you're talking to somebody, you're trying to communicate with somebody you're close to, and they're trying to talk to you and you start texting or you go on social media, Instagram, any of that. And it kind of distracts you. You think, oh, yeah, I'm still listening. But in your mind, you're also kind of focusing on a post or what you're trying to tell someone else. And next thing you know, you kind of just let your conversation go out. You think, oh, I just missed the last, paragraph or so of what they just told me. That's never too good. But the next section I'm going to talk about is responding help speakers. So in responding help speakers, studies show that when active listeners hear someone's problems, it helps the speaker's emotional state improve. So this was just another little article in our book that did a little bit of a study on how trained versus untrained people who would listen have an effect on the speaker. So they had a person tell a trained person on listening their problems. And when they felt heard, it helped their emotional state and their mental state as well, I believe. And then when they would tell the same problems to somebody who wasn't a trained speaker, it kind of had more of a negative impact because they were trying to feel heard. They started repeating themselves and it didn't run off as smoothly. They felt like a little uncomfortable. I believe it also said something like that, just because they don't feel like they're getting through to you. So it kind of creates a bit of a barrier there. They don't feel like they're being heard. And the next part is going to be questioning. So there's positive and then there's negative types of questioning, and the definition is just asking for additional information. So for the positive section, I'll go over first. There's to clarify meaning. So this means you just don't assume. You ask questions, but you have to kind of have the right tone because you don't want to come off negatively. So you can say like, oh, like, what does that mean to you? Or like, oh, like in what situation? Like, oh, what happened next? Kind of a thing, just to kind of come off like you're paying attention and you just kind of are being more intent. So there's also to learn about others' thoughts, feelings, and wants. So that's a caring question about others' opinions, their emotions, needs, and wants. So again, just kind of, oh, really? It's hard to kind of give a specific example, but I know there's a few more in the books. But it's just to be more like thoughtful. The next kind is to encourage elaboration. So sometimes people don't talk about themselves because they don't really feel like they need to, or they don't feel comfortable enough to. So sometimes if you ask them a question without without passing that barrier and making them feel uncomfortable, because a lot of times they can be like kind of shy or something too. But yeah, the next one is to gather more facts and details. So wanting to know more about people or a person without being intrusive, without, again, like passing that barrier. So those are some of the positive ones. There are a few negative ones as well. So the first negative one is questions that trap the speaker. So you don't want to say something to someone where you're kind of like, oh, you didn't like the movie, did you? That's the example they kind of gave, and I kind of liked it because it kind of forced you to see like, oh, if you say no, then it's like, oh, of course you didn't like it, and they're kind of forcing to get an answer out of you, backing you in a corner. The second one is questions that make statements. So instead of just saying something more polite, you're just kind of like, oh, you're not ready yet, oh, it's taking you so long, kind of a thing. It's more of a statement than it is a question. The next one is questions that carry hidden agendas. So that's lack of information. So it's, oh, are you busy Friday night? Oh, what are you doing this weekend? Kind of a thing. And then once you tell them, oh, no, I'm not busy, they say, okay, well, can you help me doing this? Can you help me with that? They kind of trap you into that. Just like a lack of information. It's really hidden agenda. You don't know what they really want from you when they ask these questions. And then the next one is questions that seek a positive judgment. So it's kind of like demanding an answer. How do I look is a question they gave. The next one is questions based on unchecked assumptions. So assuming the other person isn't paying attention or that something is wrong. I'm guilty of doing this as well, but it's just really like assuming what's going on. It's true. Okay, so I'm going to go over the 10 key ideas next. So there's importance of listening, mindless versus mindful, listening styles, recognizing barriers to listening, components of listening, poor listening habits, paraphrasing, emphasizing, supporting, and analyzing. So starting off with importance of listening. Ranked first in communication activities, it's statistically proven that listening is most valued in families, business, and community relationships, which makes sense if you think about it as well, because in families, of course, you want to be heard, you want to listen. Your mom just told you, help me make dinner, help me get this. In work with business, of course, you would need to be able to take commands as well. You'd need to be able to listen really well and comprehend what they have to tell you. Don't take it personally, that kind of a thing as well. And then also in relationships, it's really important to be heard and to listen. Yeah, so this is really good. Okay. So mindless versus mindful. So mindless is when you're answering someone and you kind of just do it out of habit. It's just routine. So you don't have to invest much in the conversation. You don't have to really pay attention too much. It's just, okay, sure. The same old, same old. And then being more mindful is when it requires more attention. It's more of a thoughtful process. It's usually dedicated to somebody who you care about or somebody who you're trying to get closer to, or that's important to you, somebody like that. The next section that I'm going to be talking about is the listening styles. Okay, so listening styles depends on the situation. That's the first thing that I kind of put. And so there's task-oriented listening where you accomplish the job at hand. Relational listening where it's usually extroverts and they're just kind of concerned with the emotional closeness. Analytical listeners are hearing the full story and the whole message before coming to a conclusion or judgment. Critical listening is understanding the message and the quality. And then I have recognizing barriers to listening. So this is, there's a few different kinds. There's informational overload. So this is throughout your day. We always hear a lot of information, and it's important to not focus 100% on everything all the time, because since we hear so much information, it can kind of get overwhelming and exhausting if you think about it. So it's kind of good to mindlessly listen. So like we said before, just kind of out of routine, let's say you're at work and it's the same questions, just answered out of routine kind of a thing. There's personal concerns. So when your mind is distracted with your life, so it's just like personal things. So this person's not feeling well, or, oh, I can't wait to get home because, I'm trying to make up with somebody and, we just had an argument or something like that. There's rapid thought. So this is where we're capable of understanding 600 words per minute. However, we only say 100 to 140 words per minute. So it kind of has this overlap of time. So we kind of lose focus. Sometimes we end up not necessarily getting bored, but like daydreaming or like mindlessly listening to people, because we have this extra time that we've already processed what they're said, and we kind of have this time where we're like, okay, let's wait a little bit and start daydreaming. And then the next one is noise, which is atmosphere distraction, such as music, discomfort, temperature, really anything that kind of stops you from listening and is a distraction. So there's that. The next slide is on components of listening. So we have hearing, which continues exposure to the same tone or loudness. So we also have attending. We filter out messages that don't concern us. Understanding, not just hearing, but knowing them or putting meaning to something. Remembering is retaining the information, and responding is giving back observable feedback. So those are some components of listening. It's important to make sure we're doing all of these steps when we're trying to give our undivided attention to somebody. There's poor listening habits. So pseudo listening is pretending to listen. It's not good. Stage hogging is expressing your ideas, but you don't invite others to kind of join the conversation. It's mainly like you just want to talk. Selective listening is responding to only things that interest you and then just kind of ignoring the things that don't. Filling in the gaps is making stuff up that wasn't in the story. You just kind of want it to be more interesting, maybe, or something like that. You fill it in. Insulated listening is tuning out what they don't want to hear. Defensive listening is taking an innocent comment as a personal attack. Sometimes somebody will say something and you're just kind of like, oh my God, are you targeting me? You know, you take it personally. Ambushing listening is listening for information to attack the speaker. So these are, again, really bad listening habits. And then there's paraphrasing, which is providing feedback that results what the person said. Emphasizing, which is a response style listeners use to identify or relate with the speaker. Supporting, which is expression of care, concern, affection, and interest. And that's the end of my presentation. Thank you.